Lads, welcome to this podcast. Now, I've got to let you in on a little secret. Me and Hal recorded this podcast quite a while ago, but it's taken me quite a long time to edit the video. So, as you probably noticed throughout the video, at one point, I just stop editing it and just keep it as it is. Hope you enjoy it nevertheless. We are going through player by player. There are a couple of bits that I've taken out because, for instance, we talked about Callum Robinson, whether West Brom were going to sign him. We talked about Dean Henderson. So I hope you enjoyed the video anyway. All the points are still valid, just a little bit out of date. So enjoy, like the video if you enjoy it. Let us know down in the comments what you thought all the players should have been graded. And the preview to the Wolves game will be coming out tomorrow. Cheers, guys.
If you don't have a song, you may as well not go to the pub at all.
Lads.
Watch this.
Lads, welcome back to a brand new video. Today it's going to be a podcast. I am with a new friend of mine, Hal. We've recently kind of started to chat about what we can do with the channel, and Hal has done quite a few podcasts in the past. So do you want to explain your background, Hal, and how we've got to this point?
Yeah, well, as you quite rightly say, my name is Hal. It's not short for anything. It's an actual name, like the film Shallow Hal. Get that out of the way. But I'm named after the mad computer in Space Odyssey 2001. Like you, I'm a Blade. Got a couple of shirts behind me that proves it. And we are going today to run through a player's review. So of the season just gone, 1920 in the Premier League, we're going to go through all the key areas: goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, strikers. Nick, as you know, it's all very subjective. We're not analysts. You know, we don't plan to do a deep dive into analytics. And as it's opinion based, of course, we want your opinions as well. So comment below what you think. Do you agree with us or not? And hopefully you enjoy this kind of content and you can hit like and obviously subscribe to this channel for more in this vein.
Very well done. Very well done. You said you weren't a YouTube man. That's just perfect. I always forget that bit right at the start. It's always right at the end. So, no, that's great. That's a great start to the podcast.
Well, I'm pleased to aim. So, Nick, if you want to just indulge me for a moment, I want your opinion on arguably the greatest goalkeeper that Sheffield United have ever had. And I say that squinting, having never seen Alan Hodgkinson, but my dad telling me a lot about him, and also growing up idolising Alan Kelly. But Dean Henderson, 13 clean sheets, one of the greatest saves I've ever seen at home against Norwich. I was on the Bramall Lane upper, so directly above it, watching that on the goal line actually happen. Did you expect Dean Henderson to have the kind of season that he had?
No and yes. I don't know. Obviously, no one expected 13 clean sheets. No one expected anywhere near that because we were expected to get tonked quite a few times this season, weren't we? But no, he's definitely exceeded expectation. I always knew that he's obviously got a bit of a mistake in him every now and then, which obviously he showed early on in the season. I think he was a bit tentative coming for balls at the beginning of the season, Joe, like with the Chelsea away, where he was like, I'm going to go, I'm not. And then he kind of, as the season went on, he wasn't having too many saves to make because the defence had been so great. So I think if the defence wasn't as good as what it was really early on, because I think the first few games of the season, he didn't have a lot to do. Like that Crystal Palace game sticks in my mind the most, when I came away from that game thinking, I don't remember Palace having a shot. So, yeah, I think early on the defence helped him out, but obviously he got better and better as the season went on. Lockdown, after lockdown, I think there are a few pundits talking about, oh, he possibly should have saved that, maybe should have saved that. But it's because he's set such high standards for himself, hasn't it?
Yeah, the standards really are high. You're right about how we always feel like, almost with every goalkeeper we've ever had, there's an error in them. I remember QPR away, thinking I've travelled all this way. and the game's already over. Jamal Blackman
Yeah.
making that error, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Lee Baxter as well, Burnley away.
Did you go to that one?
I did go to Burnley when we lost 3-2 with Lee Baxter in goal. I remember Stuart McCall actually, when there was a penalty given, going up to Baxter and saying, "Look, Robbie Blake's going to take this penalty. I've played with him before. I'll tell you which way to go." Telling him which way to go, and Baxter ignoring it, going the other way. And Blake scoring. I actually wrote an article about that very game for Den Blades fanzine, which is well worth getting.
Yeah, me and my dad went to that Burnley match as well. I can't remember what year it was, but it was around the time when they had the buy one get one free guy. He was the stadium announcer, weren't he? I'm sure he was. But no, that was an incredibly bad goalkeeping performance. The worst one there's ever been, you've got to say.
Oh yeah, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. But at the moment, we're focusing on 13 clean sheets. That's the joint third for Dean Henderson. So your season performance, if you were to cap it for Dean, what do you say?
What are we talking a number or are we talking words?
I don't know. It's a good question. Do you want to do it a number? Or do you want to do it a grade? Like we're Americans, exam time. I'm not sure. I think I'll bow to your greater wisdom on this one.
After listening to Blades Pod, I think we need to go grade, don't we? Because they went for
it's different. Isn't it?
We're definitely not copying. This is actually quite difficult because I've never actually had to grade someone.
Grade a human,
okay,
Nick.
I will grade a human. I'm gonna say, are we plussing on minus? I'm gonna go B plus.
Yeah,
B
I think we
plus.
have to.
I don't know, maybe A. Go on.
I think B plus is perfectly fair because, as you mentioned, the error against Chelsea, that cost a goal. The error against Liverpool, that cost a goal. Of course, as a goalkeeper, any error you make, it's probably going to cost you a goal. If you're giving someone like an A plus, that's probably impossible in football. So, B plus seems fair. You'd maybe think should probably side on an A because it was his first season in the Premier League.
Like you say, first season in the Premier League. He's made so many excellent saves. When you were talking about the Norwich game, I always think of the Norwich away game as kind of the greatest save of the season from a Dean Henderson point of view because that was point blank. I thought it was in when he'd struck the ball, and it was such quick reactions. Yeah, didn't expect it. So yeah, to be fair, they were both excellent saves. But I wasn't actually at the Norwich home game. I was on a stag do. I just remember my dad saying, "Dean Henderson's just kept this ball out. I've got no idea how he's done it."
I'm with you that. And in fact, Dean Henderson did that against Norwich at home in the Championship as well, a point blank save. Incredible. So obviously he's got something over Norwich. Of course, he actually sort of had a bit of a go at Norwich. I remember when he was training with England, probably under 21s, and he put a video out on his Instagram of playing football the Norwich way. He was sort of singing that song as he was walking to training at Carrow Road. You've got to love that.
Take your time, Sheffield United.
So we're giving him, as we've kind of discussed between us, an A minus, and I'm sure as we go through this, I could probably convince you to change every grade. So I'll try not to do that.
Yes, I'm very much a people pleaser.
Well, you've pleased me just with that face. So when we look at next season's expectations, we don't know where Dean Henderson is actually going to be plying his trade and playing his football. Of course, you and I very much hope that it's at beautiful downtown Bramwell Lane, and if it is, you'd want more of the same.
Absolutely. I think that I would say for Dean Henderson as a negative point is he doesn't fill me with confidence sometimes when he's coming. He doesn't really come out for balls and catch them. And I know it's kind of like an old school way of doing it. You don't see many goalkeepers coming out to the penalty spot and taking a ball like they did in the past. But yeah, I'd like to see more of that from him, being a bit more dominant in his penalty area.
I'd probably like to see him work on his kicking. He's got a bit of the Simon Tracy about him with his kicking. Sometimes it's not that accurate. I know he's said that Manchester United and England think that he can't kick the ball because Ollie McBurney doesn't win enough in the air. I very much disagree with that. I think Ollie McBurney wins a lot in the air, but I would like to see him improve his footwork. I think he actually thinks he's quite decent on the ground as well, so no excuses.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Leeds United at home last season, where his feet definitely weren't very good.
Don't think about that ever again. Of course, we've got that Yorkshire derby to look forward to next season. When we think of goalkeepers, of course, there was one keeper that was a mainstay for a season and then really, through no fault of his own, lost his place to Jamal Blackman and then Dean Henderson. Simon Moore always seems quite reliable. That save against Sheffield Wednesday at home in that 0-0, they were all 0-0, of course, apart from the 4-2. Forever, it feels. He is a keeper that I have so much respect for and admire. He only played 2 games, both of those games against Manchester United when Dean Henderson couldn't play. So did you expect Simon Moore to play more than 2 games?
No, honestly, no. I was wondering whether he was going to throw Verips in there, if I'm being completely honest, because Simon Moore, I don't think he did anything wrong in the first game against Man United. He flew at, I think it was it Rashford's feet for one of them. He came way out of his goal, and it was just like, I've never seen a goalkeeper do something like that. But he's not played all season, has he? The thing is, you've got to be able to give him that to kind of bed into a game. But he's played 2 games this season. You can't really give him any stick.
No, and with the goalkeeper, you need to play regularly to develop that rapport with your defence. If you look at it on paper, it doesn't make great reading because he played 2 games and conceded 6 goals. But of course, it was against Manchester United and they've played football before. So season performance for Simon Moore, it's probably quite harsh for us to give him a grade. And so because of that, I sort of stick with the baseline of a C.
Yeah, C's fine. He didn't really make any standout saves, I don't think. But also, you can't really blame him. I think the thing was as well, John Egan missed both those 2 Manchester United games as well. So he had Jagielka in there, and Jagielka barely played all season as well. So yeah, it's difficult for him. So yeah, we'll go with C.
I do remember Chris Wilder when we could lip read him at Old Trafford, asking Simon Moore what, with some colourful language, he was doing. And I did feel, even at the time, I thought I was a little bit harsh. But that game, we didn't really turn up as a team. So maybe hard to have a go at just one player. When it comes to the defence, though, we can say what an incredible feat it was to pull off conceding the small amount of goals that Sheffield United did last season. We'll start with Ender Stevens, the left wing back who can play centre back, who previously only played left back before he joined Sheffield United. What a great defender, and really, before lockdown, one of our star performers. Did you expect him to make the step up? Because really, it looked like in the first season that we had Ender Stevens, it wasn't the player we were hoping for. Then he really kicked on another level in our promotion season.
Yeah, absolutely. I still don't think he was excellent at the start of the promotion season. I think he got better and better and better with every game, and especially towards the end of last season. I thought from the very start, just before we'd started the Premier League campaign, I thought Ender Stevens and Jack O'Connell were going to be our standout players. So yeah, I completely expected Ender Stevens to manage that step up, just on how good he was at the back end of the promotion season. And obviously, he kicked on really early, well, didn't he? Especially at Chelsea, where he was megging everyone in sight.
His actual close control, his feet, the skill for a defender. Sometimes it takes me back, because you and I both enjoyed watching a skillful defender in Vasilis Bobokis, but we haven't had too many.
No, not at all. It takes me back to the time of Jordan Stewart, of Andy Taylor, of who else did we have? Marcus Williams. Oh, the joys.
I wish you've reminded me of Leeds United, the Lee Baxter performance, and now those defenders. So we need to get straight back onto something positive. Your season performance review of Ender Stevens, please.
Ender Stevens. It's difficult because of how poor he was in the first few games after lockdown. I think he was excellent. One of the standout players before lockdown. He had a little bit of trouble with a couple of injuries, didn't he? Right at the end of just before we kind of finished. And I was kind of happy in a way that lockdown came when it did, because I was thinking it gives Ender Stevens time to kind of get fit. Because I think, did he come off in 2 games in a row? And it was like, he needs a rest. He really does need a rest.
Yeah, he got that rest, but it didn't make for the player that we'd seen prior to that, and even the player that Irish fans have enjoyed as well for the national
No,
team.
exactly, because I remember watching him in a couple of Irish games when he kind of very first got called up and was that mainstay left back, and he didn't have a great start to a couple of games, and I'm like, Irish fans, he is good. Like, stick with him, he's good, and obviously just.
Yeah, I saw a few games live for the Republic of Ireland. I recently found out through Mum doing some family tree research that we have a lot of Irish ancestry, so I've been getting into all of that. And I went to see Ireland in Gibraltar, where we had Callum Robinson, David McGoldrick, John Egan was on the bench, and Enda Stevens, and he was fantastic in that game, albeit against Gibraltar.
Okay, yeah, Gibraltar. That great footballing nation of Gibraltar, yeah. So yeah, I think before lockdown we would have probably gone A-. After, what would you say before?
I think he was probably one of our top 3 best players pre-lockdown, and so I would say a straight A.
Okay, straight A. I'm not going to go with you. I'm not going to go with you. You've told me already that you're going to change all my mind. So no, I think in between those. But yeah, go on. After lockdown, what do you think?
After lockdown, it was, will the real Enda Stevens please stand up? We didn't see him. It wasn't Enda. I don't know who it was, but if that had been a new signing, you'd have said, I'm not sure we should keep him for next season. So that's probably a D, which will bring his whole performance to a C+.
It's tough. It's really tough to give him a C+, though, isn't it? Because of how...
Oh, that's way too harsh. I think, realistically, look, because after lockdown wasn't as long as the first part, you're probably saying a B.
I'm happy to go with a B, yeah.
I mean, some of the stats, right? 10th most blocks in the league. He did start every game. As you mentioned, some of those, we believe he was carrying a knock. Joint top for assists with Lys Mousset with 4. He had 15 shots, 4 on target, 2 goals, Norwich away, and Brighton at home, the goal of the season. 123 open play crosses. I mean, the man had a good season.
So what grade then?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sticking with B, but I think we caveated that quite fairly with post-lockdown. Maybe he just wasn't fully fit, and that's what I want to definitely believe, and I'm sure you'll agree with that.
Yeah, I'd like to believe that, but the thing is, let's see how he comes back, because to be honest, it looks like we're trying to bring in a few different fullbacks, so that'll probably push his game up a little bit anyway.
And Enda Stevens hasn't had competition. I mean, even Daniel Lafferty wasn't pushing him too hard. So you're right. Competition will breed success, because you'll feel like, right, there's someone breathing right down my neck. I've got to up my game. And if it wasn't injuries that was preventing him from doing that, then yes, maybe it was just he needed someone right behind him ready to step in. We saw when Ben Osborne came in, I thought he was excellent. And of course, we'll get to him. But that was in a midfield role where he really got to exert himself. And I think, obviously, you ask any Forest fans, that's where he's best. So for you, Nick, your next season expectations, are you expecting Enda to be our starting left wing back?
Absolutely, yeah. I don't think you can bring someone else in and slot him straight in there. I think Enda Stevens has made that role his own. I think everybody who's kind of in the starting lineup, defensive wise, you can't deviate away from that. Even if we brought in a £50 million centre back, you can't separate those 5 because they were so excellent last season.
Agreed. And we're not going to bring in a £50 million centre back. Spoiler alert! Even if you're watching this in 5 years' time, it didn't happen. So you're expecting Enda to start and maybe push on from that first part of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm expecting big things from him next season, because I think the post-lockdown form is probably hampered his chance of getting picked up by a bigger club, because I was saying to everyone before every time I got onto a video with somebody who supports a different club, I was like, Enda Stevens is the second best left back in the whole league. I've been saying that all season, and then look what he does to me.
Yeah, you're obviously referring to Andrew Robertson being the number 1. Yeah, I don't think too many people disagree with that. But of course, the best right wing back in the entire league is Georgios Baldock, the Greek defender. He may end up. I mean, by the time we've finished recording, who knows? He might have already declared himself. But he said that I think his grandmother is Greek, so he could represent Greece. And at the time of recording, he hasn't played for the national team of Greece. There's some people that were talking earlier in the season, the crazy talk that he might be good enough to play for England, but there is a lot of competition in that position in the England side. So probably not very realistic. I sort of feel like I've got to be slightly on the fence with George Baldock because I happen to be friends with people who know him personally and his family. And so I've always had a soft spot because I'm broadcasting right now from Buckinghamshire, which is where he's from. And I know quite a lot of people that know him. So I've always kept a little eye out for him, even when he was at MK Dons. So I'll sort of step back a little bit here and say, for the man who also started every match, played the most minutes of all our players, 3,420, what was your expectation going into the season with George Baldock?
Very low, if I'm being completely honest. And I hate to say it. Because he's been so good, and I've got I'm the same. I've got a massive soft spot for George. I think it's just he's everything that Sheffield United stands for. He came from the lower leagues. He's just improved season on season. He's got better. I just love the guy.
I mean, he was previously just known as Sam's brother, and now he's overtaken.
Absolutely.
But 128 open play crosses, 3 assists, 23 key passes, 10 shots on goal, half of those on target for a defender. It's fantastic. 2 goals, both with his right peg, both inside the box, the best of which, that stunner away to Norwich.
Yeah, absolutely. The only problem with that is 3. I just don't think that 3 assists he's good enough, if I'm being completely honest. He'll got himself into a lot of good positions. Don't get me wrong, sometimes it's a through ball to Basham to play the ball into the box. Sometimes, it could be going back inside to kind of Norwood or back inside to Berger or Lundstrom or whoever. But I just think he makes us tick. I really do. I think he's just got Chris Wilder's philosophy perfectly, and he has. And his defensive work has got so much better. It was the Palace game again. Keep banging on about this Palace game because obviously that's the first game that we saw them at Bramall Lane this season, and I was like, how can we... I said this to a Leeds fan recently on a podcast. I said, I didn't feel like we could keep up that intensity for the full season, and I'm thinking, we've beaten Palace here 1-0. We've barely given them a chance, and I was thinking, we're going to have to do this another 40-odd times or whatever. No, that's not 40 times.
Yeah. Well, 36 times at that stage. But yeah, we'd laid down a marker and stop comparing George Baldock to Vaspar Bokis, all right, with the assist thing. You got to let it go.
But
he did get 7 yellows. But one thing I'd like to see George do more is when he does get into those great positions to cross, is he likes to float a cross in. And that invariably leads to nothing but a clearance. Drilling across low, time after time, I always think it works so much better because even if you don't meet the foot of Lise Mousset or Ollie McBurney, you can meet the foot of a defender and it can go anywhere.
Absolutely. And I think the thing is, it's not just about his crossing. I think sometimes you need kind of like a Frank Lampardy type of run into the box to kind of startle the defenders, make them think, I've not just got to stand here and head it away, I've actually got to worry about someone darting at the front post or peeling off around the back.
Which he did. I think West Ham away was a good example of when Gorgeous George, got into the box on 2 really good occasions and then just woeful finishing let him down. But you're right, that would have kept the West Ham, the dirty, cheating West Ham defenders, on their toes.
Absolutely, yeah. What are we saying for a grade for George?
Okay, I'm going to let you go first this time, so I can't possibly sway you.
You'll still sway me, because I could say F and you'll say B, and I'm like, yeah, I agree with B. No, for George, it's difficult because I had this again, it's going to sound horrible, but I had such low expectations going into the season with George because I thought we were going to end up bringing someone in January.
Really? Because you mentioned you wanted to score more goals. Well, we already had a right wing back in Kieran Freeman who can score goals. Maybe he would never have done that in the Premier League. We'll never know now.
I don't think Kieran Freeman's level is Premier League, if I'm honest. I think it's kind of lower. He was excellent in League One. Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. Like, he is either a top-end League One wing back or right back or whatever, or a lower-end Championship. Probably a lower-end Championship. The thing was, him and George were both kind of on par in the promotion season early on, and then George just were like, that is my shirt, I'm not letting that go.
Just took off. There were so many blades at the start, particularly our first season in the Championship, who were like, well, it's Freeman, obviously, who's the one we must start at that position. And you'd get a bit of a divide there between fans. And then, absolutely right, once George did take off, he continued his ascent, and the sky very much is the limit. But the big question is, what is your grade?
I keep trying to deviate the conversation away from the grade, I think. Yeah.
You do. It's the pressure.
What did we say for Ender? Did we say
man.
A B for Ender?
A B-friender. Yes.
That's my Sheffield coming out.
I was just thinking, is that a new
you've
word?
Been away from Sheffield for too long.
Honestly, I should probably say this at this point. I have never lived near or in Sheffield. Fun fact.
Okay, fair enough.
Just a glorious
yeah. So we did say a grade B for Ender Stevens, didn't we? Yeah.
Yeah, someone's writing these down. It's just not us.
I think a B again, if I'm honest, because I think Ender was probably better. Ender had a better time when he was. I don't know how to explain this. I think you know what I'm about to say, but
when he was better, he was
exactly.
better.
And George was always a 7 out of 10, always at least. Yeah. So yeah, I think probably probably B+ at best.
Well, there were those standout performances you mentioned. Obviously, that game against Crystal Palace. I thought Tottenham away, he was excellent as well. I've mentioned West Ham, where if he couldn't finish his dinner that day, he'd have got a couple of goals and we'd have won that game. But I think that's fair. I'll go along with that and say a B as well. What do you expect from him next season, Nick?
I don't know if he's reached his peak. I'm not too sure. I hope he hasn't.
You are really harsh on George Baldock. He's not going to do it this season. He's already reached his peak.
I've been writing Basham off all his career. Bless him.
I don't want to hear that because we're going to fall
We're
out.
not though, because I absolutely love Bash.
I'm wearing the Basham shirt though now.
Yeah, I was just thinking we've both got the same season on, and it wasn't last season, was it? It was the season before. Yeah.
Loved it, that's why.
I think George. He's a 7 out of 10 every single week. So unless somebody comes in and rips that shirt off his back, he'll be there all season, and he'll be great.
Yeah, I agree with that. And even if we do sign sort of players who've been linked with, like Matty Cash, or I think Connor Roberts at Swansea is another name that's been thrown about, that first game of the season, I fully expect the entire defence, as you've said, as long as no one leaves, to be exactly the same. Which leads us beautifully on to the left-footed man mountain that is Jack O'Connell. If you throw a brick at his head, he will return that brick with interest. 32 games started, 1 assist, defensively 144 clearances, 17 blocks, and 42 interceptions.
Incredible.
Wow.
The thing is with Jack O'Connell, he does all the dirty stuff that you don't really take notice of. Like you've just said, the clearances, the blocks, the interceptions. You don't take them into account. You know that someone's blocked that ball, but you don't automatically know who it is or give them credit. And as I've been a centre-back all my life, you never get that credit. Never. So, I think we need to give Jack O'Connell, put some respect on his name, shall we say.
I agree. It's such a good point you make, because if he doesn't make a fairly innocuous, it might seem, clearance, you just never know what the next phase of play would have led to. And I think there's so many incalculables, I think is the correct word, where he's made a defensive clearance or a block, and had he not been, his positioning had not been as good as it was, it would have led to something, maybe a chance, maybe even a goal. But we never even get to see those, because so many times he is in the right position, and that's after he's probably just bombed down the left to put in a cross, because of his 1,557 passes, 1,145 of them were successful. That's 73.5%, quick maths. And also as well, 48.9% of those were going forward. He's a positive heads-up player. Couple that with 51 open play crosses, the same amount as Chris Basham, who I love and you've already made a slightly scathing comment about, which we'll come to. He must have, I'm sure you'll agree with this, exceeded expectations.
Absolutely. Like I said earlier, though, I expected him to have a really good season anyway. I always thought that him, Ender Stevens and Fleck were probably our best players, outfield players that is. And yeah, I expected it from him, to be completely honest. I expected a bit more going forward, but it's difficult to say you expected a central defender to do better going forward. As you alluded to, 1 assist, no goals, which very
disappointing
for both him and Bash, but obviously we'll get on to Bash. And it would have been Egan if it wasn't for them two goals towards the back end of the season. We obviously just don't score enough goals from set pieces.
It's true. There was a time when we did, and then I remember an article being written about what Alan Knill and Wilder were doing with set pieces, and it seemed like, well, after that, everyone sussed us out, and that was a shame, because you and I have grown up watching defenders bullet headers in, or players like Phil Jagielka, the first incarnation, when he would take a ball down on his chest against Leeds, against Middlesbrough, and smash a volley into the back of the net. I don't really see John Egan doing that. I mean, and certainly didn't until he played against Burnley away. And the same with Super Jack O'Connell. I would just love to see him be a bit more assertive and a bit more dominant in the attacking end, because I've mentioned his positioning is so good defensively. Perhaps he needs to work on his positioning as an attacking force at set pieces. He often seems to have a couple of players around him, though. I respect that. So it's obviously quite difficult because he is that presence. So you're going to go, right, watch that guy.
Absolutely. And he did pop up with a few goals last season. The 2 goals that I do remember were obviously O'Connell coming in.
O'Connell coming in!
The one against Villa as well. Obviously, I've watched that game against Villa when we beat them. It was 4-1, wasn't it?
Yeah, 4-1. I always forget the one.
Yeah, no, I don't even remember that. It was because it was the goal against both goals was so dominant in the air, and that's what we've not seen of him this season, because both those goals, it was like the ball's in the box, it's there, I will win that ball. And yeah, both those goals, I can't remember if he scored any more last season, but I would have liked to have seen more of that this season.
Do you have a standout performance, or is it all shades of grey? Because a bit like George Baldock, although I think with Jack O'Connell he's probably an 8 every game. Did he just impress you every time he played?
No, it didn't. And the reason why I say that is because of how good he is every week. He never impressed me, because he was just that good always. And I think Jack Robinson did well, but we all realised how much we missed Jack O'Connell the second he walked on that pitch. Who was it against now when he came on? Burnley. The second he came on that pitch and he was overlapping straight away, getting balls in the box, it's like, oh my God, this is the reason why we haven't ticked in the last few games. I can't remember him giving the ball away. I can't really remember him making any sort of mistake. Who is it that made the mistake against Chelsea? Was it Jack O'Connell who jumped over Egan, or was it the other way around?
I think you could argue that both Egan and Jack were at fault, and Dean Henderson against Chelsea, really. A bit of a long ball over. I think Wolves at home, I would like to mention, Jack O'Connell was excellent in that game, as the whole defence
absolutely, yeah. They were. They were telling us all the game, weren't they, how good Wolves were on the attack. And
certainly late on, second half, watch out for Wolves. Here they come.
In the second half. They did give us a couple of scares when they was running straight through the middle of the defence, but they did the things that they needed to do. Bring a player down in a decent area when you have to, and there's nothing else you can do. Jack O'Connell is quite good at doing that. They were, like you said, they were brilliant.
Yeah, there's 2 things I love: a diving header and a professional foul.
Excellent. I'm not sure about that. I much prefer a Jagielka against Manchester United tackle. Last man, bang. Yeah, nearly put him in John Street.
Yeah, I'm picturing it now. Well, we'll come to Jags as our last offering in the defenders for obvious reasons. He didn't play that many games. But what are you giving as a grade for Jack O'Connell?
I think we're gonna have to give him at least a B+, if not an A-. I'm edging towards A-, to be honest.
Yeah, I was going to say A-, so I would just completely agree with you and then ask this big question. First of all, do we keep him? And secondly, if we do, can he repeat these consistent performances in the Premier League now that every team knows he's such a super defender next season and should be in the England squad ahead of Tyrone Mings?
I have no idea if we're going to keep him or not. The problem that I think other teams would have is I think he'd slot into the Wolves team no problem whatsoever. But he's a great defender, don't get me wrong, but he's been playing that role, getting up and down that wing so much. Is he going to slip into a two-man central defence? I'm not sure.
It's a great question. When he was at Brentford, he was a bit like the David Holdsworth at Watford. I remember David Holdsworth saying when he left Watford, he left without a thank you or a goodbye because he wasn't appreciated there. I felt like Jack O'Connell wasn't appreciated at Griffin Park. Certainly not like he's been at beautiful downtown Bramall Lane. The only other team I can think of in the world that Jack O'Connell could slot into the system of would be Atalanta. Yeah. And it's unlikely that he's going to go to Serie A.
Exactly. I think the problem is maybe he is too good in the system that he's in. It might be a reason why other teams don't take a punt on him. The thing is, if you're going to take a punt on him, he's going to be 30, 40 million, let's be honest, with the way that money is now in football. So I don't think he's really worth that, worth the punt, if you know what I mean, for another team. But yeah, he's definitely worth his weight in gold for us.
Well, if I was Jack O'Connell, two things. I get a sponsorship with a bricklaying company, but secondly, I wouldn't leave because I think he can achieve everything he wants to achieve with Sheffield United. If we keep the core of our side, we'll only build on it. I think European football will follow, and I think players like him will be recognised and rewarded with international football. So he should stay put. All right, John Egan. Wow.
Some first of all, the greatest Irish player of all time.
Some might say that. Yes, some would definitely go along with the lines of when he did that header on the floor at home against Liverpool. That said everything about how brave, how technically gifted he is, how creative he is, how he'll do anything to put his body on the line to defend. The man just loves defending. Loved his goal at Burnley as well. The winner at home to Wolves was a wonderful feeling. We mentioned Chelsea away, where, it was a bit of his fault and a bit of a mix-up with Jack and Dino. But really, it's hard to pinpoint many John Egan errors because there's so few that we remember that Chelsea one.
I think the only ones that the only two games where I remember him being particularly poor was Newcastle and Aston Villa. I think he got caught out a few times. Obviously, first couple of games after lockdown, maybe lost his focus a little bit, but they all did, didn't they? Let's be honest.
And Newcastle was an interesting one because the first booking he got was never a booking. The second booking he got, I thought it was a very odd decision of John Egan to make that foul that he did, particularly on a booking. You'd rather let the player go through and score because at least then you've got 11v11, you can get back into the game. So yeah, I agree with you. That was a big mistake.
Absolutely. I think that the problem was him kind of getting caught out, and the John Egan of before lockdown wouldn't have even got himself into that position in the first place to make that foul. The thing is as well, it was Joe Linton running through on goal, so he'd have probably missed it anyway.
Yeah, he was immense. I think special mention Everton away, where he really performed magnificently and just looked like the defender that I expected him to be, as I'm sure you did going into the season.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a head it and kick it kind of defender, isn't he? And it's not just about that. The reason why he's so good at heading it and kicking it is because he gets himself into the right positions to do so. And that's the thing, when all the other players are bombing up the field, we've not done it as much in the Premier League as obviously what we've done in the Championship and in League One and stuff like that. But John Egan, he's actually improved his feet as well, in my opinion. I think we've been trusting him a little bit more with the ball at his feet. And do you know what? I'm sure I saw a stat where it was John Egan's hit the most successful long balls as well, which really surprised me because I never thought he had that in his locker. Obviously, he does ping a ball every now and then, but I think he's just got better in every department.
Well, of course, you expect the long ball passing of Ollie Norwood. Don't necessarily think of John Egan. Is there a standout game for John Egan that you want to reference?
The Wolves game, wasn't it? The winner. It was just sheer determination to go and win that header. And obviously it was great defensively as well. Great defensively all season, but the reason why it sticks out for me was that header. Yeah,
I completely agree. What are you giving him as a grade?
I think he was very unfortunate not to win Player of the Season. I think a lot of them were, though, to be honest. But I'm going to have to give him probably an A-.
Yeah, that's what I've got written down here as well. So again, we're in agreement, which doesn't make for great YouTube content. So we better come up with a big disagreement soon.
Definitely.
Do you expect him, first of all, to be at Bramall Lane, say yes, and then to kick on next season?
I can't see him going to... I think Everton were interested earlier on in the season, weren't they, or something like that. There's no point in him going there unless we have a really poor start to the season. He wants to jump ship. I think he'll be there.
Well, it would only ever come down to money. If it was to leave for a lesser team, it would have to be financial. And that would be disappointing, because you like to think that our boys are above all that. They play for the love of the shirts, but maybe I'm being naive. So. The greatest footballer of all time, after probably Tony Curry, is, of course, Chris Basham. And Basham Bauer started every game. He's in the top 5 for most interceptions with 77. The man at the top of that list is Wilfred Ndidi, and he had 80, just to put that into context. So, Chris Basham, there's, from what you said to me earlier, no way you expected him to be player of the season and to have performed as well as he did in, I think, pretty much every game bar one. We sort of made one error at home early on in the season, I think, against Southampton.
There was the Leicester one, wasn't there, when he
Leicester,
had a little jog
the one
across
I'm thinking.
the halfway line and then just gave the ball away.
That was the one I meant.
Yeah, I think the thing is with Chris Basham, you always expect a man to not manage to step up. We thought that from League One. Well, I think a large proportion of the fans would have probably thought he couldn't keep handling those step-ups, and the man has been incredible. I expected him to start most games. I expected him to kind of still be doing what he was doing, but I didn't expect him to do it to the level. And going to Manchester City and going and taking 4 or 5 men on.
I love when Bash decides to nutmeg a player or knock a ball past and run, do a bit of trickery, a bit of wing wizardry, get a cross in. I mean, I'm going to give you one game which might surprise you, where I thought he was a standout performer, and I thought he was the only one on the day who turned up. But Newcastle away, and I know that would have meant a lot to him, that game, being from where he's from. I thought he played really, really well in that match. Is there a standout performance for you?
In that game, I think he was the only one that was playing at his, not at his best, but playing above the rest of them. Trying to think of a standout one, maybe. I don't know. It was. I just enjoyed watching him all season. There was the back heel against Aston Villa, obviously. There was the marauding run against Manchester City that I've seen so many times. I'm trying to think of any other. I really enjoyed the tackle on Son away against Spurs when I thought he was away and Bash just. He's quick, isn't he? Let's be honest, he's quick. He's fit. He's so fit and quick, and obviously he just dies for the shirt, doesn't he? And it was one of them where it's like, Bash, are you going to make that? Are you going to make that? It is against one of the best players in the league, and yeah, that was just Bash all season.
Well, he had 167 clearances, 7th most in the league, as we've already alluded to, only the 1 assist, but involved in so many attacks. Sadly, no goals. I really felt like if anyone I wanted to score after maybe Didsey, it would have been Basham Bauer. Arguably irreplaceable, and as I've said already, our player of the season. I voted for him to be our player of the season. I'm very, very glad that he got that. As mentioned, I think his standout performance there were so many. Yes, Tottenham away. He did so well in that match. Manchester United at home. Newcastle away, as I've mentioned as well. So Bash, just wonderful. You can always rely on him. And he's a player that I think makes me as a fan feel like he represents us more than any other player out there, because he's living the dream. He recognises his limitations and he goes out there and he does it anyway. And I always feel like sometimes you watch players and you think, crikey, but for the grace of God, I could be out there. That when I used to watch Nick Montgomery, I thought, you could put me out there for 45 minutes and it's not going to look too different. But with Bash, he just gets the most out of his natural ability. Also, I saw him on Instagram doing some squats with some incredibly heavy weight, and I look at him, and of course his frame is a bit like me. I train all the time as well. He's an ectomorph, just like me. He never puts on any muscle, so I also relate to him with that. Okay, I just got a lot of time for the guy. He also seems like a really nice bloke.
Really
so
humble,
I want nothing
really
but the best. For him.
Did you hear his interview
really
when they gave him every award possible this season?
Yeah. Well, of course, he's a man that worked in McDonald's, so he's going to be humble, and that's why he's relatable to us fans. Love it.
the one thing that I always bring up is obviously we've had him for a long time. The 5-5 draw with Swindon in the semi-final, he was the only one that he gave an interview, and it was just like you could see how devastated he was that we didn't get through to that final.
Well, he scored in that game, didn't he, as well?
That was the first Basham arriving as well. Because, I think it's Daniel Mann. He did the Basham arriving before the Basham arriving in that Swindon game, which was quite weird to hear back.
It was a test drive. He knew what was coming at Ellen Road. What are you going to give? What are you going to give Bash then as a grade? I mean, for me, it's easy.
A.
Yeah, it has to be an A. It could have been an A+, but for that error against Leicester. Well, if an A+, I guess, is perfection. So that's the only reason we would do that, because he was pretty much perfect. And I feel like if he's to keep those levels up next season, that'll be, first of all, very difficult for him. It's going to sound silly after everything I've said about it, I don't actually think that he can keep those levels up. It might be too much of a tall order, because so much of our game, it relies on Chris Basham being 10 out of 10 every single match, and we are not getting a lot of rest before the season just kicks off again. So I do worry about that. What do you feel about next season expectation for
like
Bash?
You say, he's the fittest guy on the pitch, isn't he, always? So unless he gets injured, which, touch wood, I can't remember the last time he was.
But do you worry that he's been kind of overperforming for so long? It's like, how long can this keep going?
I've thought that every season, though. I said it earlier on. Like, every season I expect Bash to not handle the step up, and obviously he's at the top of his game. I can see him getting better. Better.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to move straight on from that in case you say anything I don't like. Jack Robinson, his debut against Villa away. So the man didn't play a huge amount of the season. A signing from Nottingham Forest. He was arguably, in his debut, the best player on the pitch. He's got a great long throw, some poor crossing at times. But overall, a decent and certainly, I would say, better than expected defender.
Absolutely, yeah. I think when he doesn't play, we kind of miss that throw. I wish that we could give that throw to somebody else, because that throw is deadly. We saw that against Arsenal. And obviously a few other teams, but that's the only thing that you can say he's got on Jack O'Connell, really, because obviously we alluded to earlier that Jack O'Connell just he just gets the way that we play. I feel like sometimes Robinson wanted to get forward, then he got a little bit nervous and like, nah, I won't go. Whereas Jack O'Connell would have just gone full Jack O'Connell and just sprinted the pitch. So
Is that like a Tropic Thunder?
I think so,
reference?
Yeah. No, I think he did as well as what we could have expected. One of my best mates is a Forest fan, and he said that why are you signing this guy? And that's from a Forest fan. So Chris Wilder obviously saw something in him, and I think that he is in between a kind of left back and a centre back. So he's probably perfect for that role. But when you've got Jack O'Connell in front of you, it's difficult to get game time, I suppose.
Yeah, not shown enough getting forward, despite his sort of left wing back past that you referenced there, even though he was playing centre back for us. I mean, I've mentioned Villa was probably his best. Is there any other standout performance? He was sort of consistent, not great against Burnley away.
No, I thought, I don't know, they were quite similar, all quite similar, his performances. I thought he was steady at the back, but like you say, not getting forward enough, and in that position, I suppose you've got to. I think, to be honest, probably Bash didn't get forward that often straight after lockdown. I think it was all a bit flat, so that probably didn't help kind of him coming into the team and trying to get the philosophy straight away, because it's easy doing it on a training pitch, but then actually going into a game and taking chances and flying forward, because we all know that if defenders make mistakes, it sometimes ends in a goal, or more often than not ends in a goal. So it must be hard to take that defensive part of your brain out of your head and just fly forward. So, yeah, I think he probably came into the team when we were probably at our worst in the seasons.
I think that's fair. I also think, I kind of felt at the time a little bit sorry for Keane Bryan. I know not many people will say that. You've seen his misses, she's beautiful. But that he'd waited for so long for Jack O'Connell to be out, and it's been an understudy. learnt all his lines, ready for the big night. And then Jack O'Connell's finally out, and we've signed Jack Robinson. So, Keane Bryan, you're gone.
Yeah.
You're done. I felt like I don't ever believe Keane Bryan would have been good enough for the Premier League. But just as a human, I kind of felt a little bit sorry for him because that was something he was obviously waiting for. Jack Robinson, then. What's the grade, Nick?
Difficult because he's not played many games, has he? So, what's the lowest grade we've given up to now? Is it a C?
Yes.
I can't remember who it was now. I'm gonna
don't
I'm
do
gonna
that to
give
me.
him I feel really bad. C minus.
Ooh, yeah, that is a bit harsh, isn't it? With his long throw, it's a C plus
Okay.
from me. I think that's fair. I mean, there's going to be some players, if you think, as you're watching this, oh, why haven't you discussed so-and-so? We're trying not to discuss every player in the squad. Players that didn't perform that many minutes on the pitch, we're not going to go into too much detail of. We are going to come to next, though, a man that is synonymous with Sheffield United, a former youth player. Even though he didn't play many games, you can't talk about Sheffield United without mentioning Phil Jagielka. One thing I love about Jags is when you go on these Sheffield United forums or these Facebook groups, the spelling of every player is atrocious except Phil Jagielka, and is the only one that people seem to get right. Sharp will have, an E. Clark won't.
Yeah.
But Jagielka is always spot on, and it boggles my mind. So you probably expected, like I did, Jags to play a few more
Yeah,
minutes.
absolutely. I think it's just the fact that the other three centre backs have been incredible, haven't they? If I'm honest, I know he's aging a little bit, but I thought he possibly could have slipped in where Bash plays. But after seeing him against Manchester United, I'm like, no, he's past that. He's past the days of him playing. Because I remember him playing right back when he first really came. Because he started at centre mid, didn't he? And then they put him at right back, and then back to centre mid, then centre back. Yeah, I always remember Jagielka as a great ball playing defender. And it really, really upsets me that young kids these days don't understand how good Phil Jagielka was. They'll just remember him as this aging sort of player.
He was a totally different player when you and I would have been, I speak for myself here, when I was a younger boy. And I met Phil Jagielka, again, a bit like some of the other players I've mentioned that I've met or know of, just the nicest guy. And I've met his family as well. I used to sit really close to his mum and dad when I was a season ticket holder. Lovely family as well. So always wished well of Phil Jagielka. I remember Norwich away when he went to centre-back. I think we just lost to Sheffield Wednesday at Hillsborough despite outplaying them. And we went to Norwich, who were flying high, and we were expected to get spanked. And we were like 3-1 up very early on, ended up winning 3-2. And that was like the first time I'd seen him play centre-back. And you think, well, Warnock's lost the plot. Why is he putting the central midfielder, who at the time was quite an attacking central midfielder, in at centre-back? And we've never looked back since then, even though Jags would have been a midfielder all the way through his youth career. He's become an England international at centre-back. But yeah, he had that flying down the right-hand side thing about him. I can't imagine he's lost that much pace. He never really was about pace. He was just in the right place at the right time. So I would have loved to have seen him play a few more minutes. And yeah, when we played Manchester United away, you think, is that because of lockdown? Is he now just a bit past it? He didn't look as good, certainly, as he'd looked against Manchester United at home, when I actually thought he slotted in fairly comfortably.
Yeah, I think the only problem with that Manchester United home game was I think it was Mason Greenwood that kind of, he lost his man when the ball was coming in the box. And I was kind of thinking, and I hate to say it, but I was kind of thinking, I don't think John Egan would have done that. But the thing is, Jagielka hadn't played all season, had he really? The only other time, other than the Man United games that he played, was kind of 5 or 10 minutes towards the end of the game.
Did a decent job, didn't he, against Everton away, against his old club, of course. He'd have been desperate to put in a good performance, and he did
Yeah,
as a
absolutely, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why Wilder brought him in. Obviously, we were 1-0 up for quite a lot of the game before obviously taking it 2-0. But yeah, Jags, I think that's the reason why he brought him on, because he'll have been dying to keep that ball out of the net.
I think rating-wise, for a grade, it's going to sound a bit harsh, but it's probably a C minus, just because, in the 2 games he started, a bit like Simon Moore, conceded 6 goals, and he's a defender.
Yeah, other than the tackle against Man United at home, I can't really remember him doing too much that I kind of sat back and thought, oh yes, that's the old Phil Jagielka. I'll probably go with a C minus. To be honest, it's difficult to rate these players that's barely played any minutes.
We move on to midfielders. We are Oliver's army at times because our vice captain is Ollie Norwood with his ping. 2007 passes ranks him 15th in the Premier League passes leaderboard, and Virgil van Dijk is actually top of that, which surprised me a little bit. I know 49 key passes, 1 goal and 1 assist, but I think he should have had 3 assists because I think he should have had the assist for that own goal away at Everton, the Gaeta own goal against Palace, and of course he gets the assist, I believe, for the Wolves home one, the corner that Egan scored from.
There was obviously the goal that should have counted against Aston Villa as well. So yeah, there was
yes, and that would have been. Would that have been an assist? Because it would have been an own goal by the keeper, wouldn't it? So I'm giving him 4 assists,
right. Yeah, absolutely,
which would mean,
yeah,
which is great for a midfielder. But one thing we've got to say about Ollie Norwood, and this would have been us going into the season as well, because we've seen it in the Championship, and I know you agree with this. When Ollie is bad, we as a team are bad.
And Ollie's had some terrible games in the past because we know how good he is. We know how he can pick the ball up and swerve it round players. We know that George Baldock just has to stand there and put his hand up and it's on his toe. When he's not on his game, he's awful, and that just breeds throughout the team. Definitely, yeah.
It does. Nick, do you think hanging over him always is that every team before the Blades that he won promotion with, they didn't think he was good enough to make the step up to the Premier League? They didn't fancy him, and actually there must have been a real knock on his confidence.
Yeah, definitely. But the thing is, he knows how much we love him. Chris Wilder's given him the captain's armband when Billy Sharp's not there. So obviously Chris Wilder wanted him as a mainstay. I think obviously now we've brought Sander Berger, and I think he'll be trying to kind of slip him in there. Maybe not straight away, I don't know. Chris Wilder seems to like... I think the last game of the season just proved that that's where he's wanting Sander Berger to play. But for me, I think Ollie Norwood's had a lot of criticism towards the end of the season, unjustly as well, because I think that when Norwood has a bad game, you can see it more because he'll give the ball away a lot and you'll be like, oh, come on. And he's the kind of quarterback that starts everything off. And if he loses that ball, then they're kind of on the break, if you know what I mean. So I think it's a lot more noticeable when Ollie Norwood has a bad game than kind of maybe John Fleck when he's running forward with the ball and the ball.
And also, if you're going to attempt a lot of passes, then it's more likely that more of them are not going to come off. I like the quarterback reference. He's the Aaron Rodgers of this team. If you follow the NFL, you'll get that reference. 47 interceptions, 39 clearances. So we've already mentioned that he definitely did have 4 assists. He's also great defensively as well. He does like to get stuck in. He got 8 yellow cards, so a bit naughty at times. But he does, by the sounds of that, therefore have that kind of box-to-box full package, even though it doesn't feel like he's a box-to-box midfielder. He kind of sits back, dictates the play of a deep-lying playmaker role. So is it possible for you to pinpoint one Ollie Norwood standout performance?
Not really. Again, it's the Jack O'Connell sort
I'm the same.
effect, isn't it? Not really. I think for me, Ollie Norwood, it was just the transition from going from kind of Lee Evans to Ollie Norwood in the Championship, because I just feel that
you've just made me think we are sweating like the comedian Lee Evans right now. But I know you're wrong about the midfield.
No, Lee Evans, I really liked him when he first came in, and it got more and more sideways and backwards passing, like a kind of David Batty sort of player. And when Ollie Norwood came in, he just took us to a whole new level. And I feel like he's very, like you say, when he's bad, but when he's good, you only really notice him when he's hitting these incredible balls to the wings and obviously putting in excellent set pieces. Maybe he's not been as good as last season whipping those crosses into. I don't know. I'm trying to.
No, I think that's probably fair.
Maybe that's the reason why centre-backs haven't got as many goals as last season. I don't know.
Some of his set pieces were dreadful, and you think, well, you get John Fleck taking it. You know, sometimes his set pieces were were very poor. A fun fact, you mentioned David Batty. I have, when I was getting into refereeing, I have refereed both of David Batty's lads,
Oh, right,
both his
okay.
boys. When I said fun fact, I just meant
I
a
enjoyed
fact.
it, though.
So, what grade are you giving Ollie Norwood?
I think that he definitely deserves at least a B. At least. I think he's been excellent for probably 2/3 of the season, if not slightly more. I think he's had a lot, like I said earlier, a lot of unjust criticism towards the end of the season. A lot of people getting on his back, and there's just no need for it. I hope.
Good for
Yeah,
you,
thank
Nick.
you.
I think sticking up for Ollie, I mean, again, it doesn't make for great content. It'd be better if we were having a blazing row. But I am completely in agreement with you. And the people that said he's been average or poor, I don't think they actually understand the game of
Yeah,
football.
no, absolutely, yeah. I'd like to see him there again at defensive midfield. However, Chris Wilder, when he buys a player or when he brings a player in, he likes to play them. And I think, obviously, early on in Sanders' kind of Sheffield United career, if you like, playing on the right-hand side didn't really suit him. So bringing him into that central defensive midfield role, I think that's what Wilder's going to want to do. So I think Ollie might struggle for as many games next season as he had this season.
I think you're right. John Fleck, he was immense, wasn't he? And you expected it because he's one of our best players.
Yeah. Like again, he's got better and better with every season. I maybe didn't expect him to play. I don't know. The thing was, John Fleck's not scored too many goals in the last couple of seasons, and he's just completely like kind of improved that area of his game. But I think that's because Duffy's not there, so he's got to do more attacking work, hasn't he? So I think it's given him more freedom down that left-hand side to get amongst the goals, get amongst the assists. And it's just been a joy to watch him this season.
It really has. A contender, of course, for player of the season. Burnley at home, he was incredible, scored his first goal of the season. He had 19 efforts on goal, not in that game, in the season. 11 on target, so 5 goals, which is brilliant. 2 assists as well. Against Villa, he got his first brace of his 403 games at that stage in his career. I mean, it's an 11-year career. His first brace. Really quite incredible. 999 total passes. 802 of those were successful. That's 80.3% quick maths for you again with John Fleck. So a wonderful tally, and amazing to think anyone who used to play Football Manager when he was the wonder kid from Rangers, that he would regularly score you 10, 12 goals a season. He's obviously not that player. But what he does bring to the team, I think, unquestionably, it's actually not even a hard word, is it's invaluable.
It's everything about him, isn't it, really? It's, we've always been after that one player that can pick the ball up and kind of wriggle through players. He's obviously not a winger either, and that's what you would kind of expect. I just love a player that can pick the ball up and just drive straight through the middle. I think the only problem with that is we don't have a plan B at times, I feel. And I feel it's always down the wings. And I think since we've kind of, we don't play that attacking midfield role, we've lost that sort of dynamic run through the middle. But Fleck obviously pops up every now and then, does something like that. Obviously, he kind of moves teams around. I love the guy. Like,
so do I. I mean, I couldn't have picked get Arsenal away. If you'd asked me if I could have any player to have scored in that game, because I've got living down south, so many Arsenal fan friends, that goal meant everything to me.
Yeah. What a finish as well. That could have easily been goal of the season as well.
Yeah, completely agree. So obviously, I think we're go again be in agreement here, but maybe it's not a surprise that two blades who've just watched a very, very good season are going to be generally in agreement. What's your grade for John Fleck?
Another one that I think probably could have deserved player of the season if he didn't get injured. I think kind of recency bias, sort of everyone forgot how good Fleck was at the beginning of the season. I'm going to go A- probably.
Yeah. Spot on. I can't dispute that at all. Do you expect, John, I really want an Iron Brew now. Do you expect, really do I love that stuff, John Fleck to have a similar season next season? I don't think he's going anywhere.
No, he's not, no. getting on a bit now as well, and is he? I say getting on a bit. He's probably the same age as me. But yeah, I can't see anyone coming in with a big bid. It's got to be a big bid to prize him away from Bramall Lane, and I don't think anyone's willing to do that for someone who's kind of in the 30s now. Yeah, he's only had one good season in the Premiership, I suppose, as well. So yeah, I expect him to be at Bramall Lane doing the exact same thing as he did last season.
Yep, you love to see it. John Lundstrom.
John Lundstrom. Ooh, there's going to be
a
lot of people.
Do I need to say anything else?
There's going to be a lot of people in the comments right now. Oh, I hate John Lundstrom.
I don't think there will be, because he is one. We signed him from Oxford. This wasn't a player that we expected to be a starter in the Premier League. I went to pre-season against Real Betis in the Algarve, or as I call it, the Halgarve.
Okay.
And he was exceptional. He was brilliant.
Yeah.
He was great. Palace at home, the first goal of the season for us at home. Incredible. He was great against Burnley, where he could have scored 10. 5 goals, 3 assists. And at the end of the season, you look at it on paper, you read all of that out, transfer listed.
I don't want to say it's his fault, because that's how the Duffy thing went about. But yeah, I don't know. We don't know, do we? We don't really know what's gone off in the...
It's the same with the Duffy thing. You and I were not there, and we'll never actually know. All it looks like from afar is that Wilder lays down a marker. If you come knocking on the door asking for a contract, you can get out of the club.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it looks like. And some people may say, well, that's incredibly harsh when you've just had the greatest season in your career, a short career as well, football.
The thing was, I kind of called it at the start of the season, because a lot of people said that I said that Lundstrom was going to start the first game, and looking at how we set up in the pre-season games and the fact that it was giving Lundstrom a lot of game time, I thought he's going to start Lundstrom because we're going to start with this kind of static 3, not knowing how kind of influential kind of Lundstrom and Fleck were going to be. I thought we were going to sit very deep, try not to concede many goals. And Lundstrom, I never expected it from him. I expected him to be good defensively, because we all know he's got a good engine on him. And I always knew he had a good kind of crossfield ball on him, because he loved that. Loved a tackle, but I didn't think he'd be as...
Oh, he loved a tackle against Jack Grealish,
yeah,
didn't he?
Everyone loves that one.
His name sounds Swedish. He really hates Jack Grealish.
I've never heard that before. Is that one of yours?
I just made it up. Yeah, you can have it.
Yeah, I'll take it. All right. Yeah. No one would have expected the goals that he would have come up with. Arriving in the box late, bit of a Frankie Lampard type of late run, and not just that. It's actually he was getting into positions and he was finishing it. I've watched them a few.
Sometimes he could have scored more goals. Even the last game of the season, you felt like he should have got another.
It will be sad if he does end up leaving. But you know what Chris Wilder's like? He puts someone on the transfer list. They end up being Player of the Year or whatever.
Paul Coots, of course, is who you're referencing. Yeah. I don't see him. I don't actually see him leaving. I know he had his bad games. He was very poor away at Liverpool, but maybe that's because he really wanted to play well against Liverpool. I mean, because he's a Scouser, but then again, he played superbly away at Everton, set up Lys Mousset. So maybe it was just one of those days. Maybe training in the park before wasn't for him.
Yeah.
Who knows? I want him to stay, and I want him to still be in the side next season. I love Lundstrom. That's like I love Lamb, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what about the standout performance from Super John Lundstrom?
Maybe not the standout performance, but what I loved about him was coming on against Bournemouth at home and being like, yeah, he might have cost 22 million, but I'm still here. And that finish against Ramsdale, it literally was within half a second. It moved it from his right to his left, and it was back in there. I just loved he came back and he were like stamping a marker, like saying, no, I'm still here. I'm still fighting for this play. I sounded like Kevin Keegan then.
He won his place back in the side, and of course then started over Berger against Norwich at home in the Billy Sharp match, of course, and that wonderful save from Dean Henderson that we've already mentioned. So what grade are you going to give John Lundstrom?
John Lundstrom. For me, it's a season of two halves, because obviously he had a few poor games in the middle, and then Sander Berger came in and ousted him a little bit. I'm going to give him a solid C+, I reckon.
I mean, this is where we are going to
Go
disagree
on.
because he had the season of his life. He scored an amount of goals we'd never have expected from him. He wasn't even expected to be always on the bench this season. Not only was he one of the first names on the team sheet, but apart from, as you say, a few games round about Christmas and maybe just a bit after where he really dropped off, he was great in every game and really surprised me. So the games he was great in, he was great. I should probably put it like that. And the games where he was poor in, he was really poor. And it was noticeable. But again, that's because he set these new high standards. I had no expectation before the season that he'd play that many minutes. I thought someone like Ravel Morrison, who we're not even going to touch on, would be playing that amount of minutes. So it's for me, it's a straight B because he overachieved and exceeded my expectations.
Yeah, he did, absolutely did. We'll disagree on this one, shall we? I'll not.
All right,
Yeah,
it's good. It's good to have disagreements, a nice healthy disagreement. I mean, next season, I'll just ask you this one, and then we'll move on to Ben Osborne. Is Lundstrom in red and white next season?
Can't see it. No, I want him to be. I really like him.
He's not going to Southampton then.
He's going somewhere. He's going somewhere.
All right. Okay, well, I hope that doesn't happen, and I'll go out here and say that even though he's transfer listed, I don't think anyone will sign him. I think he'll see the light. I think he'll sign a new contract and remain with us for another 3 seasons. That's what I want.
3 seasons, wow, okay.
Be brilliant. Another man who I hope is with us for a long time is Ben Osborne. I like this lad. Very witty website that he runs as well. You mentioned David Batty. He reminds me of David Batty with flair.
Yes, absolutely, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, he was everywhere. He covers every blade of grass he can pass. He's got strong, clean tackle on him. That sounded weird. He gets back like at home against Wolves when we made that sort of late key tackle to stop them scoring. Then gets forward. Was right up there when we got the third against Chelsea. Just doesn't give the ball away. Could be the next Paul Coots in terms of a fan's favourite if he got regular minutes.
Possibly, but I can't see it really. Just the fact that he's left-footed, because if he was right-footed, he'd have a big chance on that right-hand side. But
Nick, don't you think that's very unfair? Because Wilder will play a right footer on the left, but he won't play a left footer on the right.
Yeah, I don't understand that. Never understood that.
Well, I'm left-footed, so I feel this is incredible discrimination.
Not as forward-thinking, is he, as Fleck? And
Well, maybe not, but I want to see more of him because I've seen a few flashes where he did look as forward-thinking, and I think he might have a goal or two in him. He really excited me. He was a lot better than I thought he was going to be. A bit like Jack Robinson, I'd heard Forest fans mixed opinions of him.
yeah, I thought he was going to be a defensive midfielder more, to be honest. And he was used in that Fleck role. Again, maybe kind of like Jack Robinson, where he just didn't really have that confidence to do something what Fleck would do, if you like. But yeah, he was definitely, against Chelsea, he was unbelievable. Against Spurs, he was great. I think...
Yeah, Tottenham at home, standout performance for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only issue with that is that you have one bad game and Fleck's breathing down your neck. And that was Everton.
True. Absolutely, although no one played well in the Everton match. So what's your grade for Ben Osborne?
I'm going to go for... Now I've said that Lundstrom's a C, I don't know what I'm going to do now.
Yeah, you really put yourself in a hole there.
Yes, I did.
It's got to be less than that, really, hasn't it?
C minus. Put it out there. C
Yeah,
minus.
it was nonsense. The mad ramblings of a loon. I'll
It's the
say
mad ramblings of
B,
somebody that's not prepared. That's what it is.
B minus for me, just because I thought every time he did step foot on the pitch, he looked really, really good.
Yeah, let's just keep him in that central midfield role rather than that left back because I think he's just okay at left back where he's great in the midfield.
Agreed. I don't think he is a left wing back, and I think if he was signed as that, he'd have even said, if he'd been honest, look, this isn't my position. I've played central midfield all my life. Another man who's played that position is Sander Berger, or Sander Berg, if we're going to call him the name of his song.
Birch.
Lovely song. Birch. He's ace. He seems again like a lovely lad. Scored a lovely goal as well against Tottenham at home.
Yes, he did.
A lot more to come from him. He, desperately poor against Manchester United away. Should be better in the air because he's incredibly tall.
Yes.
Arsenal in the cup, he looked really good, and I think we started to see why this money was spent. But what were you expecting, and has he delivered?
Like we all were, I was expecting a lot more than kind of what we got. £22 million. He looks great on YouTube, as everybody does. I don't know what I was expecting. I didn't really know what to expect from him because I knew him as that player that picked the ball off the defence and ran with it and then kind of gave it to somebody who was a better footballer, if you like. And then he was playing on the right-hand side of midfield, well, the right-hand side of the central midfield. And he looked out of sorts. I think the fact that he was brought into a position that wasn't his own, yeah.
Do you read too much into that, Nick? Because we've both played football, albeit not quite at the same level. But central midfield is central midfield, isn't it? You know, if you're playing on the right or the left-hand side of the centre, is it too different to playing in that kind of deeper role?
Yes, I do believe so, because the way that Lundstrom was playing that role was up and down, getting and supporting. And the thing is, Lundstrom, in my opinion, is much more dynamic. I don't know, he's getting better. It seems like he's getting better and getting more used to the Premier League, Sander Berge. But I feel like Lundstrom gave us so many good moments that we kind of just expected him to be better than Lundstrom.
Yeah, I mean, not that many good moments, judging by your grade. What about Sander Berge's standout performance? Was there anything for you where you thought, this lad's got it?
Probably Spurs. I think that finish, excellent. I think, like you said, Arsenal, it was great. I think in that Arsenal game, we saw that there was more to him than this big, huge guy that Nesh challenges and didn't want to get his head on the ball. I still do, like you said, I still do think he's one of them players that doesn't want to get his head on the ball, but he's definitely getting stronger. I think it was the Chelsea game where he had a few players round him and he didn't look like he was kind of scared of picking the ball up and holding someone off and bringing someone else into the game. So, yeah, I've got high expectations for him for next season, or higher than kind of the end of this season. I think he's going to get better and better with games. And he needs that pre-season.
I'd love to see him bandage on his arm, score against Liverpool, and just bring back so many memories of Jostein Flo. Because at the moment, he doesn't even look like the best Norwegian we've ever had. Yeah. And for that amount of money, you'd expect him to be the best player we've ever had. I know that's not his fault, that amount that was spent on him, but I am expecting a great deal more, certainly from what I've seen again on YouTube, where, you know, everyone does look like a world beater, but he's got a long shot on him as well. I want to see that, because there were certainly games where I thought, test this keeper, and he didn't. So what's your grade for Sander Berge?
Can I change my Lundstrom one, because I feel like everything is being compared to Lundstrom.
You can.
I'd probably go for an E for Berge if Lundstrom's a C. Do you know what I mean? I'm just trying to.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can change it, but I want no one to have any respect for you or your opinion.
Well, the channel's over. I might as well close the account now, haven't I?
Yeah, of course you can.
I think I would probably, if I had Lundstrom at about a B- or something like that. I'm only putting it up a little bit, only a little bit.
I mean, I said I'd change all your mind, all your opinions with my Jedi mind tricks, and I have.
I think that Sander Berge has got to be probably a C.
Yeah, I'm going with a solid C for Sander Berge. Maybe a C+ just for his song.
Possibly. That was a great song. It was a great moment at Palace as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, love that Palace moment. My nephews love the song. They ask me when I go around and see them to just sing the Sander Berge song. So, yeah, it's got a special place in my heart because, I like my family. Luke Freeman, again, someone we expected to see more minutes of, like certain players we've already covered. Clearly very creative, but you've got to say, deserves a bit more of a run in the side, wouldn't you?
Yeah, definitely. I fancy him as a bit of a fleck. And the thing is, I expected Luke Freeman to kind of play the Duffy role, if you like, in air quotations.
As did I.
But when he played against Palace, I thought he slotted into that role perfectly. He got stuck in more than if he played Duffy, say, in the Lundstrom role. I wouldn't see Duffy making the challenges that Luke Freeman was making. He was getting stuck in, he was getting up, he was getting down, he was creating chances. Obviously, he created the goal as well, where the keeper parried it to Lundstrom. I feel like we've been crying out for a number 10 that's not. Don't get me wrong, David McGoldrick is brilliant at that, but sometimes I feel like we need another creative midfielder in the central areas, and Luke Freeman could have been that player, especially when what sticks out in my mind is the Newcastle game at home, where we were just putting balls into the box constantly for Sharp and McBurney, and it was crying out for a central midfielder that could just create something, a nice little through ball, flick a ball around the corner or something, catch him unawares. And yeah, he's just not been used, has he?
To be the key to unlock a defence. There's so many games, you're absolutely right, when you think we just need something. Didsy, who is David McGoldrick for non-Sheffield United fans, although why on earth are you watching this video this far? If you're not a Blade, I've no idea. Didsy, I think I would like to see him play more in that Duffy role, but in the Premier League, we haven't really played that formation too many times. With Luke Freeman, I feel, Nick, like so far we've only got good performances against us to go by. When he's played against us for like QPR, he's always looked really, really good. I thought he played very well in the FA Cup match versus AFC Fylde, and he played very well. He was man of the match in that Fylde match. He was very good against Reading away.
I was going to mention the Reading game as well. Thought he was great. He always looks great. He always looks one of the best players on the pitch when he plays. Obviously, the opposition may not be quite to Premier League standard when he does play. He's just been.
He'll probably feel like he hasn't been a part of this. You know, if he's talking to friends about it, they'll say, oh, what a great season Sheffield United are having. He'll probably feel like he can't take a lot of credit for that.
Possibly not. It is sad because I can see us letting him go as well, making room for somebody else. But I'd like to... The problem is, what is the point in him sitting on our bench? I'd like to see him go elsewhere and carry on his career, because it doesn't feel like Chris Wilder's ever going to give him that chance.
And at the age he is, he needs to be playing first-team football. Completely agree. It's going to be a hard one to give him a rating. Again, we haven't seen too many minutes, but for me, if I'm to give Luke Freeman a grade, it's probably got to be a C-.
I would go higher than that, but only because of when he has played, I think he's been really good. If I'm just talking about the games that he has played in, I'd probably give him a solid C, maybe slightly higher. But again... Can you really grade someone who's not been through the hard times and the good times? It's just he's played an odd game here or there, and he's played well.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. My grade is very much based on the fact that he hasn't played a lot of minutes, which is not his fault. Gutted he got injured just after, I think, the Villa game following the restart, when he would have played, what with Fleck out. So that was a real shame. Bit of the Keane Bryan effect. We move on to strikers and Callum Robinson. The reason I've done it like that is Callum Robinson, he looked great in pre-season, so much promise, but Nick, he is blatantly a winger.
Absolutely. Do you know what? I don't know what... Is he a winger? Is that his best position? Who knows?
I think if we played with wingers, he'd be a shoo-in, but a £7 million signing, why did we sign him? I mentioned I saw the Republic of Ireland in Gibraltar in that game where some tickets were still available. He was playing up front in that game as well, and he wasn't good in that game. And I was thinking, gosh, I thought that guy was a winger because, of course, he wasn't a Sheffield United player back then. And I was watching him very closely because I thought he's a very good Preston North End winger. And when he was at West Bromwich Albion, I know they don't really play with wingers either. They play sort of three up front, but there's two that kind of, you know, as loads of teams do now, have that kind of three up front, but two of them are wingers. And he looked very, very good for West Bromwich Albion, or as I call them, West Bromwich Halbion.
God.
Only one goal and one assist for us. You've got to say, questions have got to be asked. Is it his fault? Is it Wilder's fault?
I think it's a bit of both, really. I don't think he doesn't fit our system, does he? So that's what you can probably put it to Wilder's fault as. But at the same time, I went to the Man City away game. He just didn't seem interested. It didn't seem like not interested. That's pretty harsh, but
he didn't win anything, did he? Every ball that was played up to him, he couldn't really hold it up. Couldn't win any flick-ons. And away from home, that's what you need.
Exactly. But earlier in the season, I enjoyed watching him link up with, like, do you know, at the beginning of the season when we were not knowing how good we were going to be, and you're like, oh, that was good. Oh, that was good. You kind of remember the little things that players are doing. He just isn't dynamic enough for me. You wouldn't see him and think, oh, he's going to score us 4 or 5 goals this season. I wouldn't have even brought him off the bench for some games. And I know he's come on against kind of Man United at home and Arsenal way and kind of put balls into nice areas where we've scored goals from. But I wouldn't bring him on thinking, oh, I'm going to see a goal from him.
I remember having a bet on. There was a very simple bet. Was just Callum Robinson to have a shot on target in the entire match, and I was like, oh, well, I'll lump that on.
Yeah.
But he didn't. He didn't get a single shot away or on target in the whole game. And it was that, and I used to regularly bet on Didsey to score every game that have meant that I'm going to stop gambling now for the rest of my life. There were moments, weren't there? Like the standout, I think everyone would say how happy he looked when he scored at Chelsea.
Yeah, definitely. We're talking about Robinson here. We're not talking about Didsey, are we?
We're not talking about Didsey. We're still talking about Callum Robinson. We'll get on to Didsey. I'm just saying I did put money on Didsey to score. And, by the time he finally did, I'd run out of money. But you mentioned that Man United at home for Callum Robinson, he did put that superb cross in for the McBurney equaliser. That and Chelsea, for me, those are the kind of two things that I'll remember very fondly from him. And the final thing will be him sleeping in his West Bromwich Albion home kit following their promotion. So he's probably going to look back on this season as a good season for him personally, just not for the Blades.
I think he's a very likeable chap as well. You see him on social media, you see him, he's always got a smile on his face. And I wanted him to do well. And like you said earlier on, in the pre-season games, he looked brilliant. He scored that excellent goal. I can't remember who it was. It was a French team, wasn't it? I can't remember who it was now. That volley.
Yes.
But he also scored a couple, I think.
Rance. Is it Rance or something like that?
Yeah. I'm glad you said that and not me. He scored again. Obviously, scored either a couple or three against Barnes. I can't remember. And do you know what I was really looking forward to? I'll just do this to the camera. You can't see me doing this, Hal. But when he scored against Barnes, like he did this sort of like shark celebration. I don't know if you know what I mean, but I was so looking forward to seeing that shark celebration all season long because I knew how good he was in pre-season, and then he scored against Chelsea,
right.
And obviously the sheer emotion just got the best of him, and yeah, like you say, he looked absolutely buzzing to score that goal.
So what grade are we going to give by Callum Robinson's performances?
It's a C- for me, possibly.
Yeah. I'm going to actually be even harsher because I expected so much of him, and I'm going to give him a D.
Yeah. I can see where you've gone with that. Yeah.
Old Father Time has been calling on Billy Sharp for a while, but he's defied everyone and anyone who has put him down. He is the club captain. He got 3 goals, one with his left, one with his right, and one with his head. Not in the same game. That would have been in Germany as a perfect hat-trick. But it's not. Should have been more, particularly against Southampton away on the final day, where he could have got goals for the Blades. He's got 90 in his current spell and 8 in his previous quick maths. Yeah. So that was disappointing because he should have ended on a real high. Talk to me about your expectations going into the season for one Mr. William Sharp.
I think I expected a little bit more, if I'm honest. I kind of expected him to start the season. And I think he would have been one of the first to say that he was a bit devastated that he didn't start against Bournemouth. Didn't matter in the end. Scored his goal. He's been given his chances and he's somewhat taken them. He's scored a couple of goals. Always seems to be against Bournemouth or Norwich. But I'm struggling to find these words because I don't really want to say him. I think he's...
Don't say him, Nick. Don't say him.
I think his time might be close to being up. What I was going to say that I think that he'll get just as much game time as possibly Leon Clark did next season. Depending if we bring a striker in. If we bring another striker in, I think he'll get not many minutes on the pitch. But it depends who stays, who goes, because obviously strikers tend to stay at a club for a long amount of time. But looking at the strikers that we've got, I don't really want to let any of them go other than Robinson. So
yes, striker. Billy Sharp, I always feel like he missed such a huge part of his Blades career because of inept managers in the past not seeing and not realising his ability and letting him go. And then he had to go and ply his trade elsewhere to prove to us what a great player he was. And, 3 stints at a club. There's only Brian Dean who's done that before for us, he says, without looking it up. So I always feel like Billy missed the bulk of his career where he should have been in red and white stripes, not of Southampton, scoring goals for us. And I would have loved it if he could have had his whole career with United. It's what he would have wanted. He is already a Blades legend, but imagine what a legend he would have been if we're already talking about nearly 300 career goals, but all for Sheffield United. And he should have done that. He should have been given the chance to do that. And I feel desperately sad that he wasn't, because you only get one career. So I don't want to write Billy off. I don't want to see him play less minutes. I love him. And no one is going to go out there and try harder. He, like us fans, wants to put the ball in the back of the net. And it's just, as I mentioned, Father Time creeping up on him, because he's up here. It's all still what he wants to do when he gets the ball. And you could see frustration when he's trying to take the ball under control. It doesn't do what up here has told him to do. And that's just age, because he's desperate to do it for all of us. And he celebrates with us. And for that reason, I love him and I'll always love him.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, it's not exactly his body either. Have you seen his body? You see that kit launch when he took his shirt off? Jesus Christ, that guy, he's completely changed everything about himself, it seems, because he was that fat lad from Sheffield, wasn't he? He wasn't necessarily fat, but
he was called that. But I can remember him for Donny taking his shirt off and thinking, wow, he's ripped. I think he's always been pretty buff, and he just got into the weights, a few years ago, and he's obviously, unlike Bash, it's actually sticking. I think with Billy, if I'm to look at a sort of standout, his whole performance, his entire game at Norwich against Norwich at home was wonderful. You mentioned the moment, the opening game against Bournemouth away, where such ecstasy and joy I have not experienced before, just unleashed. So those two are sort of for me the ones I'm gonna pick out. And then conversely, when he got given that chance at home against Newcastle to start, and he was so desperately disappointing. That's the other side of Bill, where we want to see him perform to his fullest, and sometimes he doesn't, for whatever reason. Maybe he doesn't get the chances. He's not someone that's going to go back into his own half, win the ball, take on 6 or 7 and score from 30 yards. That's not his game. So he does require other players to help him.
Yeah, and I think he's probably his best strike partner would be David McGoldrick, and we've not seen that this season. They were excellent together last season. And it feels like Wilder doesn't want to play that championship strike force up front. And he's. I think he played most of his games when McBurney wasn't great, in my opinion. And I think they both looked pretty disappointing up front together.
Yeah, it's Cabba and Webber. Can they play together? Mark II.
Yeah.
But in the Premier League, because we know Didsey and Sharp can play together, for whatever reason, we haven't really got to see it. And that is a shame, and I think you're spot on.
I think Didsey can play with everyone, though, let's be honest.
Yeah, and with that, what are you giving Captain Billy Sharp? Super Billy Sharp. Don't let me influence you.
I'm going to...
Die Hard Blade.
C+.
One of us. Okay. I think I sort of don't want to agree with you, but I have to for his goal return, because there were chances he missed, and Billy Sharp scores goals, so he wasn't at his best.
Exactly.
Do you next season you think he's going to play sort of similar to a Leon Clark role, as you've already said? So I'll hope he plays a few more minutes, but we will jump on to, not literally, Ollie McBurney. I'm a big fan. I love his socks around his ankles. Tremendous skill on the floor, wins most things in the air. I think he's actually an unselfish player with a wilder attitude to teamwork. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's always difficult coming to a club, especially when there's such a huge price tag on you. At first, we possibly didn't see that. He's getting more game time. He was brilliant in a few games towards the end of the season. I just feel like sometimes I want him to be more of a Duncan Ferguson, scaring central defenders. And he's got that in him. He has. And he's good with the ball at his feet as well. He can link the play up. I expected to see more of a David McGoldrick role from him after watching him playing for kind of Swansea, because he did look like he linked the play, pick the ball up, hold it up, knock it off, get into the box, and then score a goal. But I've not really seen that from him. Maybe he's kind of transitioning into that kind of number 9, that Alan Shearer type of player. But he's getting better and better. And yeah, I'm not a massive McBurney fan, if I'm being completely honest. And I know you're going to hate me for saying that after declaring your love for him just then. But yeah, I like everything about him, if I'm being completely honest. It's
Well,
just,
I'm not a fan of him on social media because my nephew's 5 really likes him, and it's quite hard trying to explain to a 5-year-old what some of the stuff Ollie McBurney posts about is actually what he's posting about, particularly that young lady he seems to converse with
yes, I
quite
know what you
regularly.
mean. Yeah.
It's difficult. Ollie, stop it.
Yeah.
You make it so hard for kids to like you. He could score more goals, like against Burnley away. He should have scored that chance early on. Then you see what he can do. Brighton away, he took that goal superbly well. 24 starts, involved in 36 games in total. He did actually have a lot of shots, 43 shots, 25 on target. But then from that, 6 goals. That now did make him joint top goal scorer with Lys
Yeah.
Mousset. He got 2 with his head, 4 with his right. So in total, you'd probably say I'd like a bit more of a conversion rate there with 43 shots, 6 goals. I'd like to see 10 goals from that.
Yeah, at least, probably. As well, I was expecting kind of a Rob Hull sort of season from him, if I'm honest. I think if we'd have signed him a bit earlier and he'd have had a bit more time to gel with the side, because obviously Callum Robinson came in really early, had all those starts in pre-season. Ollie McBurney didn't have that. Started on the bench against Bournemouth. Started on the bench against a few more teams. He came on against Leicester and scored, didn't he, if I remember rightly?
Yeah.
And then that, I thought we were going to kick on from there, and he had a bit of stop and start sort of start to his United career. I'm looking forward to seeing him.
That's what strikers need, though, isn't it? The strikers need to develop a rapport with another striker. And if you and I were to say who was our front 2 last season, you'd sort of struggle.
Yeah, I think for me, until McBurney kind of pulled his socks up, metaphorically, I think that I would have said that Mousset and McGoldrick would have been my 2 starters, especially in that time.
Might be your 2 starters, but Mousset only started 11 games. So I'm saying who was our 2 starters up front? And I think the point is proven there. As fans, we can't say who the first choice 2 were because it changed so much, and that didn't help with our lack of goals because we did not score enough goals.
No, and I think if McGoldrick would have been fit all season, he would have played pretty much every game. I know he's obviously very injury prone from the past, but I think the only reason why McGoldrick didn't play is if he was injured, because that's when Sharp came in for McGoldrick. Mousset obviously fell away a little bit. There's a lot of kind of question marks on Mousset. Obviously, we'll get onto him. But yeah, I think that McGoldrick's played most of the season, let's be honest. So you'd probably say McGoldrick, because he started the season. Fair enough, he had a little bit of an injury spell and then he finished the season. So I think McGoldrick was a mainstay for most of the season. But then, like you say, Sharp, McBurney, Mousset.
And we started the season with Callum Robinson.
Exactly.
Yeah, so difficult. Ollie McBurney, then, what grade would you give him?
Another tough one. I think I'd probably give him a B minus.
Yeah.
I
think that's perfectly fair.
I think it would have been maybe a grade lower, not a full grade low, but maybe a C plus if he didn't have that great end to the season, because he did put in some good shifts towards the end.
Rob Hulse was a good comparison. I think if he was as brave as Rob Hulse, he could have got more goals. Do you see next season similar expectations or more than 6 goals?
You've got to expect more than 6 goals, because he's going to be starting up front with, you would probably think, McGoldrick, as long as we don't sign any other players for 50 million, as I keep throwing out there. I'm expecting him to start with McGoldrick. I think that we are probably expecting kind of like a Rob Hulse return, maybe a 9, 10, maybe even 12 next season. He's getting to
spoiling us.
He's getting used to the team as well. He's understanding how we're playing, and like I said, back end of the season, he was getting better and better. So hopefully we'll see that at the start of next.
I agree with all of that. Lys Mousset is where we are going next. What did you make of Lys? Because, of course, all we had to go on was a few bit part appearances for Bournemouth.
Have we got enough time to talk about Lys Mousset? Because we could do a whole podcast on Lys Mousset. I didn't expect anything from Lys Mousset. I did a video right at when we just signed him, and I'd watched a few little clips on YouTube. I only knew that he played for Bournemouth because of FIFA, because obviously he didn't get many games for Bournemouth, and I can now see why. When he very first came onto the scene and he was banging the goals in, and it was like, how have we got this player for 10 million? Because I've said this quite a few times, if he plays like that all the time, he should be playing Champions League football. He should be a 40, 50 million pound striker. There's just a few question marks to why he can't do it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, you keep saying 50 million. You think the Prince really does have game-changing money, don't you?
Family does,
you're right, though. And apparently, you're right, though. The podcast could be dedicated even just to some of his highlight performances, because you think Man United at home, Arsenal at home, West Ham away, where he took his shot so early, and if he doesn't take it that early, he doesn't score. First part of the season, Nicky was fantastic. But are you one of these that's in the camp of needs a full pre-season to get fully fit?
No, I don't know what it is. There's something a matter with him, whether it's mentally, whether it's physically. I don't agree with that because he's had all season. He was really, really good. I still don't think he can last kind of more than 50, 60 minutes. But he showed that, because some games he was coming off the bench and he looked knackered after 10, 15 minutes. There's just something wrong with, maybe it's his diet, again, maybe it's his mentality. I just don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. And obviously Chris Wilder can't, because he can't get the best out of him for X amount of games.
Yeah, we mentioned only 11 starts. So 6 goals in 11 starts. That sounds good, because it is. He only had 9 shots on target, so also a great rate of conversion.
Wow. That's crazy. I didn't know that. That's madness.
So bearing all that in mind, Nick, that should probably sway you when you come to your grade.
Oh, I'm a massive Lys Mousset fan. I feel like if we can get him playing how he was playing earlier on in the season, he's number 1 on the team sheet out of everyone, because he can score you them goals. He can get you up the division. And I hope he's there. I hope he's... It really, really frustrated me when I heard these fallout rumours at the end of the season, because I thought, if we can get this guy playing, he's either going to score us a lot of goals and get us into Europe, or he's going to make us a lot of money.
Do you have a standout Lys Mousset moment from the season?
There's so many. There's so many. The finish against Everton was beautiful.
Loved it.
But for me, it's got to be the Man United goal, where he just picked the ball up, just took it into, just kind of drove at them, and then just placed it in the corner. Like, who could? He barely even tickled it into that corner. And David, you're up against one of the best goalkeepers in the world. Well, at that point, he was.
People that have a go at De Gea, he interestingly kept the exact same amount of clean sheets as Dean Henderson.
Yeah, I think it's just the mistakes that he made. He did make quite a hell of a lot of mistakes towards the end of the season. And the thing,
Well, let's not start doing Man United player reviews as well. We'll be here all night. But I agree with that. That goal against Man United, again, another one that he took earlier than you'd perhaps expect a player to shoot, and certainly from a distance as well.
Yeah.
So what about your grade for Lys Mousset?
I would have gone a strong A if we were just talking about those 11 games. I'm going to have to go B, I think. Because he was still, even in those games, one of the best players in the squad. Just incredible. And the fact that he's got, did you say he's got the same amount of goals as McBurney? 6.
McBurney, joint top scorer. Again, though, misses, like the miss against, I think it was Chelsea, wasn't it? Which was bad. Yeah, it was bad.
It was kind of somebody who was pretending like they were full of confidence, but weren't actually.
Yeah.
Like it just reminded me of the Torres miss against Manchester United where he took it round him and it was just like he looked so confident when he was going up to the keeper. Obviously went for the dink, which is ultimate confidence, because in that position you would expect him to either take the shot on or try and take it round the goalkeeper.
It happens to the best. I think I saw Neymar do it for Paris Saint-Germain against Atalanta. So, yeah, I mean, I'm being a bit harsh there, but I actually agree with your grade. I think that's perfectly fair because there were some games where he was a bit missing and a bit found wanting, and there were some games where he was unplayable.
Absolutely.
David McGoldrick is where we will finish our player review. Didsy, as he's known, what did you expect from our player of the season in the Championship when we won promotion?
He was unbelievable in the Championship. He was so good, especially towards the end of the season, the back end. I'm not sure if I expected him to replicate it, but I knew that he was a player. I knew that guy was a player. He's great to watch, isn't he? Let's be honest. And I thought he would flourish in the Premier League, not to the extent of what he did, though. I feel that, obviously, he could have added way more goals to his tally. He probably could have finished above McBurney and Mousse. I think that's probably the only thing that you can knock him down for, really.
Yeah, he's a fan's favourite, which I think shows the intelligence of the Sheffield United fan base.
I agree.
And a tremendous link-up play. He's a classy Rolls-Royce of a player, not one who tends to lose possession. But the stats don't lie, Nick, and they don't make for great reading. 38 shots. How many goals he scored? So
Yeah.
that 20 on target, 2 goals, both against Chelsea at home. And this is the other thing that worries me a little bit because we talked about him playing in that Duffy role and being that link-up man. Only 2 assists.
Yeah, it's I don't believe that, if I'm honest.
It sounds like a lie, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But I'd love to know the amount of kind of assists, if you like.
Yeah, and I think
he's
Basham would
come
be in
up
the
with.
same conversation with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I don't think you can sometimes read too much into assists sometimes. Obviously, you want to see those. Stats. You want to see those great stats, don't you? You want to see.
Well, I'm not a huge one for stats, even though I'm the one who's brought most of them to the table. I just use them purely to highlight some areas where we could improve. But I mean, McGoldrick did score against Tottenham away. I thought his performance was fantastic, and I don't care what anyone says. That goal was perfectly fine.
And the thing is, if that goal would have stood, I think he'd have gone from strength to strength and scored loads more
I
goals.
agree.
It's just crazy how the referee, the VAR officials calling that offside changed his whole mentality. Because I am positive that would have sent him on a upward trajectory in scoring more and more goals.
Yeah, and I agree. And I mean, I don't want to get too bogged down on some of the VAR decisions that went against the Blades, and we've done well not to talk about them because, of course, there were some that went in our favour, like West Ham at home. But I will just say I'm not a fan of VAR. I never was. I never wanted it in the game. This is just my kind of staunch position on this. The game should be as close to the game that you play out on the pitch with your mates as possible, and to try and keep it like that because it just preserves the origins of the game and the simplicity of it. It's such a simple game. And I think the more and more complex we make it, the actual worse it's getting. The reason for bringing VAR in was, it's so much money, we can't have these incorrect decisions. Well, it's been proven that it's still people that are making errors and they're wrong and they're ruining the game. And I don't cheer goals anymore. No. And I think it was that Tottenham away game where a bit of me was just died. And I remember Man City when Moose scored, and I was jumping around.
It's always in the back of your mind, isn't it? It's always in the back of your mind.
It was just taken from me in such a way that I felt I'm not going to cheer anymore because I'm going to look stupid, and I don't want that, and I want rid.
Yeah. Do you know what it was for me? It was the McBurney goal against Man United, and obviously it ended up going in our favour. But
could have been the other way, couldn't it? I mean,
easily.
Probably could well have been.
It was very close, and the thing was, so many Man United fans on Twitter after that game were saying how it was definitely a handball, and it's like it wasn't, because it could have been a handball. It was inches, centimetres, millimetres.
If you go by the T-shirt rule, then it was absolutely fine. Nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
And, my hand isn't up there. So that's VAR, tick. I don't want to talk about that ever again, actually.
Yeah.
I just want it to be gone like they've done in, I think it's Australia, they've got rid of it.
Yeah.
It's got a real league in Australia. You can look that up. So, David McGoldrick, grade.
I think the only I would have happily gone A- if it had taken a few more chances. So I've got to go B+. I'll say.
Yeah.
It's so difficult.
It's the toughest one, I think, Didsy. The toughest one.
Yeah, it is. And everyone looks at the stats and you talk about Dave McGoldrick as one of our most creative players, but the stats just, like you said, they're not in his favour.
They don't bear that out. So next season, what do you expect from David McGoldrick?
I hope to see the exact same thing as him from this season, except for a few more goals, obviously. I think if he can take one chance really early on in the season, we could see quite a few goals from McGoldrick. It just depends. It depends if he brings any attacking players in. He might not get as many minutes as what he did this season. You don't know. He might struggle with replicating what he did this season. I don't know. I'm expecting him to come back the same as what he ended last season on, and I'd like to see him just score a few more goals. Really.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant place to conclude our players' review of the season 1920 in the Premier League, where Sheffield United finished, despite all the predictions going the other way, 9th in the table. And here's to many more successful seasons in the top flight, minding the gap from the Piggies.
Look at that ping from Norwood. Makes other teams look no good. We've got a team full of leaders. Alan Hill, Chris Wilder taught us. Yeah, there was us on the tour bus. Look how many goals Billy scored us. It's beautiful downtown Bramall Lane.
We are the boys from Shore.